Hey guys, Promo1701 here, and today we're going to talk about my favorite 13th Doctor story. It's the one story from the 13th Doctor I think is absolutely amazing. I totally love it. And it's the one story where I can think of where the 13th Doctor is really the Doctor. You can tell the way she acts, she's the Doctor. And it's not even a story from the TV show. It is a short story by Stephen Moffat called Terror of the Umpity-Ums. And it's a short story that he put out during lockdown. And it's really, really, really good. I very much enjoy it. Before I start talking about it, I am going to have a link in the description, and I'm going to tell you right now, if you haven't read it, stop watching the video, go down to the link, click on it, read it, because it is something we're going to be talking about spoilers, and it's something you really should experience yourself, spoiler-free. It's really, really good, and I actually really like the 13th Doctor in it. So if you haven't watched it, or if you haven't read it, stop watching the video, click on the link, read it, and then of course come back and finish watching the video, naturally. So I really enjoy this one. I like 13 a lot in it. The beginning of it is really good with what looks like a cyborg alien masquerading as a human child with some doctors around it. And then we find out very early on it's in a children's home, kind of like a foster care home. Which is really interesting. And then slowly over the course of the story, we do start realizing more and more that it is an actual child with a dissociative disorder. And so he's been through some trauma. It's a little 12-year-old boy named David, and he has been through a lot of trauma. And because of this, he has created this fantasy that he's a cyborg, a Deathborg 400, as he calls it. And he's very analytical about assessing the situation. His human form he calls a holographic shell. He has different sensors and stuff he can manipulate, in his mind at least. And then he hears a strange new voice, which turns out to be the Doctor's voice, as we realize. It doesn't reveal that right away, but we can pretty much catch on to it. And the Doctor in this is written really well. It's Moffat. Moffat can do really good work when he doesn't have all of Doctor Who and Sherlock on his shoulders. And the story's really clever. The 13th Doctor has this bad habit normally in the show of not being very self-confident. She has moments in the show where she's self-confident, but she seems there's a lot of self-doubt in her. She doesn't have, I think, the highest self-esteem, and she seems very unsure at times, like that scene with Graham, when Graham wants to talk to her about the cancer, and she's just like, we're going to pretend like I could think of something to say here. Ugh, it's so terrible, and it's not the Doctor at all. Whereas here, while she is helping this child, she does it in a very clever way where she manages to get on the child's level without being condescending to the child, to David. She never talks down to him like adults tend to do to children sometimes. She never talks down to him. She never condescends to him. She understands exactly how she needs to approach it. This really does give you the impression that the Doctor has been a parent at some point. I really do get that feel from her that she kind of knows how to talk to a child. She's been a parent in her life, and a grandparent. It's really clever how she does some of that. Like the bit when he's talking about escaping, and she's like, escaping? We're supposed to be escaping. I'm top at escapes. She has a lot of clever, witty banter and really good writing that I would like to see more of for the 13th Doctor. I was trying to think of some more examples. Like when he wants to burn the whole building down, she's like, I have a better idea. Why? Instead, hear me out. We just turn up the heating really high. That'll show them. They'll be sweating in their beds all night. And she says it as a suggestion. Again, she's not trying to force it on him. She knows how to slowly suggest. So he kind of at least thinks about her way of thinking. Because deep inside, there is still that part of him, the boy that doesn't want to actually hurt anybody. He's a 12-year-old boy. And I think that's key, because even in real life, traumatic things even happen. Even for an adult, it's hard for an adult to deal with a very large traumatic event. So it's much harder for children. So you have a 12-year-old boy, or this may have happened to him when he was younger, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, however, whatever his age was. Obviously, it traumatized him, and in real life, it's really hard for grief counselors and stuff like that to deal with that, to try to figure out how to reach each individual child and what works best to help them. So that is a real life problem. And seeing the doctor slowly figuring out how she needs to talk to David is really well done here. I really enjoy that in the story. I'm trying to think of some of the more clever things she says. I really like a lot of her dialogue, and her interactions with David in this are really, really well done. I like, too, at the end, when she's talking about all the different villains and stuff, the Daleks, the Cybermen, and the Umdiums, and he's like, not familiar with that one. Oh, the Umdiums, they're the worst. I'm scared of the Umdiums. And then she kind of leaves that alone. We don't get back to that to the very, very end. And then slowly, I like how the story kind of lets you decide when you want to really be 100% sure that this really is a child that's just been through a lot and not a death board 400, which I love that bit of dialogue. A death board at 400. Does that mean there were 399 before you? Did something go wrong? That's not a very reassuring number, is it? I love that banter. It's so good. And then, of course, when he's like, when she's like, there's no earpiece, I'm in your head. Well, how are you in my head? Come on, David, you have to know. No, I don't. Think about it. The doctor is good with, being telepathic powers. And how do you know all that? And then when David realizes, I saw you on television. And she's like, yeah, I know. Great show, isn't it? And you realize that in this universe, Doctor Who is, just like in our universe, it's a TV show that he has watched at some point in his life growing up. And I like that bits about, and then, David's like, Doctor Who, and she goes, I know, isn't that a brilliant name? Or that's a great name. I'm not allowed to call myself on the show. I don't know why. It's a brilliant name. I absolutely love that. And, and he's like, but you're not real. And she's like, well, not in the normal sense, but I was real enough to help you tonight, wasn't I? Well, how, and he's like, how are you here in my head? And I love that line when the doctors go, I go where the monsters are. And me and you, he goes, and we've been fighting monsters tonight, me and you. I love that. We've been fighting, I go where the monsters are. And we've been fighting monsters tonight, me and you. That is a wonderful line and very core to the Doctor. That is the most Doctor thing I think 13 has ever said. I think it's one of the most Doctor things a Doctor has ever said. It's so beautiful and I love it. She tells him, an idea is something that can outlive a person. It can go from one mind's mind to another. No matter how bad it gets, I'll always be here. And I love this version of 13. And it makes sense to me why this version of 13 is different from the one in the show. Because the one in the show is the actual 13th Doctor, at least in that universe. Whereas in this one, it's his memory of a character he saw on TV. And again, that could be the first Doctor he saw as a child. We don't know. Or it's obviously something, though, that he saw as a child. And I think all of us as Doctor Who fans, especially those of us who grew up with Doctor Who from a young age, we all have certain eras of the show that we prefer over others. Eras we really love, eras we don't care for as much. And a lot of it, we tend to be very attached to the eras we grew up with as children. Like me, my first memories of John Pertwee and Tom Baker. I've been a Doctor Who fan so long, I don't even know who my first Doctor was. I've been watching Doctor Who since I was like 3 years old. And so I love John Pertwee and Tom Baker. They're very important to me. But for him, or even in real life, somebody who their first Doctor was Tennant or Smith or Capaldi or even Whittaker, those doctors hold a special place to them. And their memory of that doctor might not be exactly what was on television. Like, say someone right now who is 9 or 10 years old and their first doctor is Jodie Whittaker. They might think of Whittaker as this heroic doctor, much like David does in the story. And so I like that this version of the 13th Doctor is very self-confident, knows exactly what to say, knows exactly how to talk to David. This is the version of the 13th Doctor I would love to see in season 13. It's so well done, so well done, and a great ending. Moffat is a really good writer. I know people give him some crap, and I think Moffat is really good when he doesn't have the weight of the show on his shoulders. Because let's keep in mind, when he was running Doctor Who, not only was he running Doctor Who, he was running Sherlock, and he was just stretched so thin. I think that's why his Russell T Davies era stories are so good, is because he just had to do one story a season. And they're phenomenal. Same thing here. I think now that he's managed to get a break from Doctor Who and get away, the script for Terror of the Umpty-Ums is really good. Plus, I love the fact that the Umpty-Ums is the theme. That's really neat. The Umpty-Dum is, the monsters coming, and then the woo is him, or her riding to the rescue. I love that. That's clever. And that her last line is when she actually gets David to admit, I get scared sometimes. She's like, woohoo! It's really good. It's a really good story. And I'd really like to see more of that 13th Doctor, and I just want to tip my hat off to Stephen Moffat again. It's easily my favorite 13th Doctor story. So, have you read Terror of the Umpty-Ums? If you are this far in this video, I surely hope you have. If for some reason you haven't, please go read Terror of the Umpty-Ums. It's really, really good. Easily my favorite 13th Doctor story. I think it's actually pretty amazing. So let me know what you think. Comment down below. I would love to hear what you think of the story and what you think of this review of the story. Other things to do: click the like button, click the subscribe button, click the bell for notifications. I have started a Patreon page, which I have tweaked slightly, by the way. Added an extra tier, a little $2 tier if anybody wants to help out with that. Also added video requests to more of the lower tiers, because I know some of you guys do have video requests you like if you'd like to get in on that. But most importantly, stay safe out there, and thank you for watching.